Welcome to the ClearPath OS 2200 Release 18.0 Technical Update on Migration Considerations. My name is Ellen Sorensen. Eric Stahl is a System Administrator for the Egan Technology Center. Eric and I are both on teams working on the 2028 TDATE remediation and reviewing the Software Planning and Migration Overview document. We've divided this presentation into the following broad categories: general considerations, build considerations, installation considerations, and fallback considerations. All of the information I'll cover here today is also described in detail in the Software Planning and Migration Overview. You'll hear me say this several times. The most important point to understand before you even begin migration to Release 18.0 is that many things are different in this release. Before we get started on the important content, we need to take care of a couple housekeeping details. During this presentation, we'll be referring to about 3 dozen different software products. Each of these products have special build considerations. Some require new or different steps for installation, and others have miscellaneous compatibility or migration concerns that we'd like to highlight. Most of these products are known by several names. The official product names are sometimes lengthy. Installation and support names are generally short. Since the focus of this presentation is on building and installing software products, we'll use the shorter installation and support name that your system administrator uses when building or installing these products throughout this presentation. This table, which is continued on the next 2 slides, lists all of the software products referenced in this presentation. On the left-hand side are the shorter installation and support names that we'll be using. And on the right-hand side are the corresponding official product names. Most system administrators are already familiar with the product installation and support names listed in the left-hand column. In order to speed things along, I won't read all of the table entries aloud, but we'll leave them here a little time for you to skim this list. If you need more time with this information, you can pause or return to these slides later. This slide contains the middle of the product list and the last of the products we'll mention in this presentation. During this presentation, we'll also frequently reference the 3 most recent software releases for ClearPath OS 2200 systems. For brevity, we'll refer to these releases by the more informal names shown in the left-hand column here. And for the last piece of background, we'll also be referring to 2 important documents: the Software Planning and Migration Overview, commonly called the PMO, and Time Considerations for ClearPath OS 2200 systems, commonly called the Timebook. You can think of the PMO as a README first document. Unisys creates a unique PMO for each ClearPath release. The PMO describes the products and product levels included in the release, new features in each product, and any migration or compatibility concerns involving the new levels for each product. Section 7 contains a step-by-step checklist to help you migrate from your current release to the new release. For Release 18, we added a new section, 3.2, Compatibility Considerations when Building Products, to highlight the changes that affect you when it comes to time to perform product generations for products delivered with Release 18. We strongly recommend system administrators read the Release 18.0 PMO before beginning migration, especially the information found in Section 3 and 7. You may have quickly glossed over this document in the past, but for this release we suggest taking time to familiarize yourself with the migration issues documented here. Taking the time to read this will help you avoid running into known incompatibilities. The Timebook contains detailed technical information about time use on OS 2200 systems and changes to time processing related to the 2028 TDATE upgrades. The Timebook provides technical information that will assist you in making any necessary changes to your own applications, whereas the PMO focuses on migrating between various software platforms. Many of the migration or product installation issues documented in the PMO are directly result of TDATE remediation, but the PMO also contains information about other general migration and compatibility concerns that are completely unrelated to TDATE or timestamps. That leads us back to the agenda and our broad categories of migration considerations: general, build, installation, and fallback. And the most important thought to take away from this presentation: many things are different in this release. PMOs for prior releases documented one migration path to follow when upgrading your software to that release. Some of you carefully followed those instructions. Others might have done things using a similar approach, but in a different order. And yes, sometimes a few of you even performed a software upgrade without reading the PMO at all. Most of the time, you still ended up running the latest release without running into too many issues along the way, even when your approach varied from the one recommended by the PMO. Those more creative alternatives are less likely to succeed this time around. Due to many different interdependencies between a larger number of products, you'll have to pay closer attention to which products are installed before others. The existing versions of several products now need to be deinstalled before you can install new levels. Even just building products from Release 18 in order to add PLEs, customize configurations, or insert local code requires careful planning and preparation. This presentation highlights the new procedures you need to consider when planning and performing your upgrade to Release 18. Again, I want to emphasize that many things have changed. Migrating to this release is not difficult, but it is different. We have tested and verified the migration path documented in the PMO, and we strongly urge you to follow as closely as possible. Let's start off with some general considerations for migrating to Release 18. In order to move up to Release 18, you must currently be running either Release 16 or Release 17. Direct migration to Release 18 from any pre-16 release is not supported and has not been tested. Most of the migration issues you'll encounter when moving to Release 18 are common to either path, whether you're coming from Release 16 or 17, and we'll cover all of these considerations in this presentation. If you're currently running Release 16, there are 3 additional areas of consideration connected to features that were introduced in Release 17. The first and second areas are associated with TDATE changes. The last is a rewrite of the MCB product. The next 3 slides outline the changes in these areas. Those of you who are already on Release 17 can skip ahead if you don't want the review. Release 17 introduced a new ER as part of the ongoing TDATE remediation. In Release 18, many products use ER time by index dollar, either direct execution of the ER or indirectly through library subroutines in other products, such as PCFP, syslib, or slib. You should assume that any Unisys product associated with Release 18 will require your system to support ER time by index dollar. If your system is running Release 16, you must add changes identified by EXEC PLE 19206874. These changes add support of the ER time by index dollar instruction to Release 16 EXEC and allow execution of programs that use that ER. You must build and boot the changes in this EXEC PLE prior to beginning any other migration steps associated with moving from Release 16 to Release 18. You can boot these changes on your Release 16 systems at any time that's convenient, even months in advance of when you anticipate moving to 18. But you cannot proceed with any migration steps until support of this ER is present. Again, you should assume that none of the products from Release 18 can be built, installed, or executed on your Release 16 system until this EXEC PLE is present. Note that this PLE includes not only a code change for the EXEC, but also requires an upgrade of the contents of your sysdollar rlib$ file. The library elements in sysdollar rlib$ file for Release 16 do not support ER time by index dollar. Installing a newer rlib$ level requires a jump key 4 reboot when booting the new EXEC tape containing PLE 19206874. The PLE content contains more information about how to update the contents of rlib$. Additional details on the impact of ER time by index dollar are in the PMO sections noted on this slide. This PLE is only necessary if you're migrating from release 16. Release 17 introduced the ability to set the 4 exec time-related configuration parameters shown here. These parameters dictate which timestamp format is used when new timestamps are created for the data structures associated with the EXEC's master file directory, or MFD, accounting, and free space components. All of the timestamps in these data structures were originally TDATE dollar format. Beginning with release 17, you can set these parameters to true to generate timestamps in the newer modified SW format. In release 17, these parameters had a default value of false, indicating that EXEC should continue to create TDATE dollar format timestamps. After migrating to release 17 and ensuring that release 17 was stable, some of you might have changed these parameters to true, but that was an additional step. In release 18, you can still set these parameters to either true or false, but there is no default. You must include these parameters in your EXEC configuration and specify which value they should have. If you're moving to release 18 from release 16, we strongly recommend that you initially set all 4 of these parameters to false. Likewise, if you're moving from release 17 but have not yet run with these parameters set to true in your environment, we recommend initially setting these parameters to false when you move to release 18. You should set these parameters to true in your release 18 exec configurations only if you have already been running a release 18 environment with these parameters set true. After you're satisfied that your release 18 environment is stable, you can start planning the steps you need to take to change these parameters to true at a time that makes sense for your business. In a future release, Unisys will remove the option to set these 4 parameters to false. So it is important that you work toward attaining an environment where all of these parameters are set to true. The PMO and Timebook both provide further information about the compatibility considerations related to these parameters. For migration purposes, the simplest approach is worth repeating. If you currently have these parameters set to false or don't have them in your exec configuration at all, make sure these parameters are present in your release 18 exec configuration and set to false. The MCB product was completely redesigned and rewritten in release 17, MCB 10R1. The MCB level delivered with release 18 is 10R2. If you're moving to level 10R2 from level 10R1, you have already completed all of the one-time migration steps for the new MCB, and will find this upgrade to be a much simpler process. Moving from an older level 9 MCB to the redesigned level 10 MCB requires additional steps. Starting with release 10R1, MCB includes an extended mode subsystem. In addition, the configuration and installation mechanisms for MCB completely changed. In the past, you used COMIS to build MCB for every application group before installing each of those MCBs. With the redesigned MCB, you install MCB product once in a new centralized mode util-A, then execute a new processor called CIU to create different MCB banks and subsystems for each application group. Unless you're adding PLEs or local code into MCB, there's no longer any need to build the MCB product with COMIS prior to installation. When you move from one of the older 9RX levels of MCB to level 10R2, you must create MCB configurations for each application group in a new format, delete and recatalog any TIP files associated with MCB, and perform an init of the affected step control application groups. These steps are all part of a one-time conversion from the old design to the new. Section 7 in the PMO recommends upgrading MCB product as one of the last steps in your migration to release 18. You can continue to run your 9RX level of MCB even after you've moved the rest of your software to release 18, then move up to MCB 10R2 at a later time. In addition, if you're running multiple step control application groups, the MCB 9 and 10R2 levels can coexist in different application groups without any conflicts. So you do not need to upgrade all of your step control application groups to MCB level 10 or 2 at the same time. The application init is necessary only when you first move from any 9Rx level to any 10Rx level. An application init is not necessary if you're moving from level 10R1 to 10R2. A final note on this topic: when MCB product was redesigned, most of the source code was rewritten in UC, and most of the element names were changed. If you typically added local code to previous MCB levels, you must examine that local code for possible changes in MCB level 10R1 or higher. The MCB Configurations and Operations Guide and the PMO sections noted on this slide provide further information about the steps required to move to the latest MCB level. One of the first differences you'll see when moving up to Release 18 is the way in which software products are built. While you might install many of the Unisys products right off the shelf without applying any changes, there are cases where you might want or need to build products before you install them. The EXEC, TipUtil, and database products are often generated with customized configurations prior to their installation. Whether it's customization, applying changes, or adding local code, you'll likely build at least a few of the Release 18 products. As we mentioned earlier, the most important point we want you to take from this presentation is that this release is different. The migration procedures you've used in the past are unlikely to be successful when moving up to Release 18. Some changes to your approach will be necessary. When you moved up to a new release in the past, you were usually able to build products from that new release on an existing system that was still running an older release. In order to achieve similar results for Release 18, you must follow special procedures. Many, possibly most of the products that are part of Release 18 cannot be successfully built on a system that is running with the standard software suite from Release 16 or Release 17. All of these changes are documented in the Release 18 PMO. For this release, it's more important than ever to read through that document. This presentation contains an overview of the updated order of product installation and the dependencies between products. These are fully described in the PMO. One of the key differences in Release 18 involves products that provide common routines and infrastructure. These include MAP, PCFP, SLIB, and SysLib. These products had significant changes related to TDATE dollar remediation. All of these products now support the EXEC time configuration parameters and all time formats in related data structures, including the parameters controlling program file and initial register R2 time formats. A majority of the products in Release 18 use library subroutines that are part of PCFP, SLIB, and SysLib. Many of the products in Release 18 assume that the Release 18 levels of MAP, PCFP, SLIB, and SysLib are available at compile time, collection, or link time, and execution time. This creates a chicken or egg which came first situation. Trying to build Release 18 products on your current system that's still running software from Release 16 or 17 before installation, and Release 18 products that can only be built or executed if the necessary Release 18 infrastructure pieces are already present. Or you can't install Release 18 until you build some products, but you can't build Release 18 products until you install the Release 18 infrastructure. To address this issue, we're introducing a new concept called the Minimum Build Environment, MBE for short. You must install a subset of software products from Release 18 on your Release 16 or 17 system before you can build, install, or execute the rest of the products associated with Release 18. This includes the Release 18 EXEC. You cannot build EXEC level 49R4 for Release 18 on your Release 16 or 17 system until you have first established an MBE. PMO Section 3.2 describes compatibility considerations and provides technical details about moving up to this release. This section covers technical details about the changes in Release 18 levels of MAP, PCFP, SLIB, and SysLib, and the impacts these changes created. Section 3.2.5 introduces the concept of the minimum build environment. Establishing the MBE is a two-step process. Note that Step 1 requires special action only for systems currently running Release 16. The first step towards establishing an MBE is to ensure that your system supports ER time by index dollar. If you're already running with Release 17, Step 1 requires no action. The exec level and the sysdollar rlib$ contents provided with Release 17 already fully support ER time by index dollar. If you are running with Release 16, you need to reboot your system in order to add EXEC PLE 19206874 and a newer version of sysdollar rlib$ elements. You will not be able to install, build, or execute any products associated with Release 18 on your Release 16 system until this additional EXEC PLE and rlib$ change has been booted. In Step 2, you must install 4 critical products from Release 18 onto your current Release 16 or Release 17 system. These 4 critical products are MAP, PCFP, slib, and syslib, and their Release 18 levels are shown here. The 4 critical products will execute correctly on your Release 16 or 17 system for as long as they're needed. You must install these 4 critical products from Release 18 in order to successfully build any other software products from Release 18. The MBE was defined to provide enough infrastructure to support building most of the Release 18 products on a Release 16 or Release 17 system, while trying to keep the list of required products and impacts to a minimum. One of the earliest steps in the migration sequence presented in the PMO Product Installation Guidelines, Section 7.7, is installing the critical infrastructure products found on the first load tape, also called the CP-FLD tape. For Release 18, the CP-FLD tape contains a total of 12 products, 4 of which are the MBE products. You can choose to install the entire CP-FLD tape from Release 18 on your Release 16 or Release 17 system before beginning any builds for the other Release 18 products. Or you can install just the 4 MBE products first and install the remaining CP-FLD products later. Installing the entire CP-FLD tape does establish the MBE and goes slightly beyond that. Your choice in handling of the CP-FLD tape to establish the MBE will depend on the nature of your system and its tolerance for outages. Some systems can tolerate outages more easily than others. For example, a business critical 24/7 production system versus a test environment. Installing the 4 MBE products should not have any negative impact on a running system. Installing the entire suite of products on the CP-FLD tape, which includes the communications products, is likely to result in a brief communications outage. In addition, if you maintain local code or have other reasons that require you to build any of the 8 additional products on the CP-FLD tape that are not part of the MBE, then you should install the 4 MBE products first, perform the necessary builds, and then install your rebuilt versions of those other 8 products. As we mentioned earlier, many products associated with Release 18 now execute the ER time by index dollar instruction. ER time by index is recognized and supported by Release 17, but not Release 16 unless you add the EXEC PLE. The contingency shown on this slide is the type of error you'll see if you execute the ER time by index dollar instruction in a Release 16 environment where the operating system does not yet recognize this ER. You must rebuild and reboot the exec level for your older system to include EXEC PLE 19206874 before programs using this new ER can execute successfully in that environment. This slide shows the map error that can occur when you build a product from Release 18 on a system that does not have a new enough level of sysdollar rlib$. Beginning with release 17, the time by index dollar entry point is defined in sys$rlib$. So using the sys$rlib$ level from release 17 or release 18 will not produce this error. If your system is running release 16, this error indicates that you need to move up to a newer level of sys$rlib$, where the time by index dollar entry point is defined. This slide shows the map error that can occur when you build a product from release 18 on a system that does not have a new enough level of the map processor. Beginning in release 18, the collector, also known as the map processor, creates a new variable called $ODSWTime. Historically, the collector has added several variables, including $8 and $IM, into each absolute it creates. The $8 and $IM values indicate the date and time when the absolute was created, represented in TDATE format. The Release 18 collector still creates these variables, but in a future release that will no longer be the case. $ODSWTime also indicates the date and time when the absolute was created, but the format of this new variable is modified as WTime. Some products have already added references to the $ODSWTime variable in Release 18. When you collect code that uses $ODSWTime, you must use map level 33R3 or higher. The variable is only created when you use map 33R3 or higher. The levels of map delivered with Release 16 or Release 17 do not recognize this variable or create a definition for it. This slide shows the link warning that can occur when you build a product from Release 18 on a system that does not have a new enough level of the link processor. For Release 18, the linking system added functionality similar to the collector's addition of $ODSWTime. At static link time, the link product defines a new variable called $ODSWTime in modified SWTime format that provides the object module link time. You must use link level 12R4 or higher to statically link extended mode programs that reference this variable. The resolution for this link error is not the same as the resolution for the map error shown on the previous slide. Although the Release 18 level of the map processor is part of the MBE and can be installed on a Release 16 or Release 17 system with minimal impact, you cannot bring the Release 18 level of link to a down-level system as easily. If you encounter this warning message when building any products, we suggest that you first establish a stable Release 18 environment and then rebuild products encountering this error after you've installed link 12R4. Because there are so many different interdependencies between products in Release 18, it's neither practical nor possible to install all of them into your Release 16 or Release 17 environment before moving up to Release 18. Installing the MBE products allows you to successfully build most of the Release 18 products, but there are a few products delivered with Release 18 that cannot be easily built ahead of time. The products listed on this slide are exception products we've identified as not buildable in a Release 16 or Release 17 environment, even when the MBE products are present. If you don't need to build these exception products, you can just install them as part of the normal product installation sequence. However, if you do need to build any of these products for whatever reason, you should delay action for these products until the end of your installation cycle. You can temporarily leave the Release 16 or 17 versions of these products installed on your system while you complete the rest of your move to Release 18. After all of the other Release 18 products are present, perform the product generations for these exception products and install the newly built Release 18 levels of these products. If you build and install any of these products at the end of the installation cycle in this manner, you should not enable any of the EXEC time configuration parameters until you have installed the Release 18 levels for all of these Unisys products. The Release 18 products listed on the slide have dependencies on additional products, such as DPS and Link, that are not part of the MBE. Installing the Release 18 level of Link on your older system is not recommended. Link is typically paired with corresponding levels of the other language product suite, such as ELMS, LSS, URTS, and the UCS compilers. And the standard product installation sequence recommends installing all of these products at the same time as one set. In addition, installing new levels of Link or URTS can often cause disruption for system background runs and require a reboot to restore normal function of regular system activities. These are the reasons why we do not recommend installing Release 18 level Link on your Release 16 or Release 17 system. Once you've established a minimum build environment on your Release 16 or Release 17 systems, you're ready to begin building some of the Release 18 products. Most of you will build EXEC and TIP-Util products. Some of you will also need to build additional products. In the past, when you moved up to the new ClearPath OS 2020 releases, you could usually successfully build the EXEC for the new release on your current system, even if that system was running software that was 1 or 2 releases back. For Release 18, you cannot build EXEC 49R4 unless you first establish a minimum build environment on your Release 16 or Release 17 systems where you plan to perform the build. Previous releases contained a separately packaged exec feature, or SPEF, for I/O command queuing called IOP-CMQ. In exec level 49R4, we integrated that code into the standard exec product, so you no longer need to add a SPEF for this functionality. If you have been adding the SPEF during your exec generation process, you no longer need to include it as an add-on in Release 18. If you were not taking any action in the past to add this feature, there are no procedural changes required of you in this area. The 4 exec configuration parameters that control the timestamp format used in the MFD, accounting, and free space components of the exec are mandatory in Release 18. You must include these parameters in your exec configuration when you build exec level 49R4. Release 17 enabled setting these parameters to either true or false, with a default value of false if you did not include them in your exec configuration. In Release 18, these parameters have no default value. You can still choose to set them to either true or false, but you must specifically state that choice. We advise that you set these parameters to true when initially moving to Release 18, only if you are already running on Release 17 and have already set them to true. If you are moving from Release 16, or if you are running Release 17 and have still not changed these parameters, you should set them to false when you first move to Release 18. The safest strategy is to first migrate to Release 18 with these parameters set false and ensure that all of the Release 18 products are executing in a stable manner on your system. At a later time, you can investigate what's involved in changing these parameters to true and what impact that change might have on your applications. This strategy is designed to help separate the migration effort into more manageable pieces. You can upgrade all of your software to Release 18 levels and ensure that it's stable as one effort, then activate some of the new features in this release later after you're certain that you won't need to return to your older ClearPath OS 2200 release level. Dropping back to a prior release is more complicated once you set these configuration parameters to true, so it's best to ensure that you will be remaining on Release 18 before making these changes. The Time Book contains information about adapting your products to support both the TDATE and modified SW timestamp in these areas. That document also discusses the phased approach being used to implement the TDATE remediation configuration parameters via a series of gradual steps. As with the timestamps in the MFD, accounting, and free space components, in Release 18 you can make similar changes to the timestamps in other system data structures. These include the timestamps found in the table of contents, or TOC, in every program file, the group of items that we collectively refer to as initial R2, and the data structures used by Media Manager. For this release, these 3 parameters all default to false if you do not specify them in your exec configuration. We strongly recommend that you first migrate to Release 18 and stabilize this release before you consider changing the value of these parameters. The program file parameter is my candidate for the highest probability of largest impact. Any application or utility you've developed that creates new elements in the program file or displays the timestamps of existing elements in program files could require code changes before it will function correctly in an environment where the program file parameter is set to true. Another concept to keep in mind relative to this parameter is something we refer to as escapees. When you enable the new timestamp format for the program file talk, it's important to remember that files and elements are often transferred from one system to another. You might be using multi-host file sharing, file transfer products such as DDP, CP-FLD, or TAS, or even copying the files to tape or DVD on one system and restoring them on another. You need to exercise extra vigilance to ensure that the program files on one system with the newer timestamp format do not escape or get transported to another system that's still using older software platform which does not yet recognize the newer timestamps. The initial R2 parameter controls timestamp formats in a variety of structures. When a program begins execution, EXEC preloads an initial value into register R2 containing the current date and time. This timestamp has been TDATE format, but in this release you can choose to make it modified SW time format. Before changing this configuration parameter to true, you should investigate whether any of your locally developed applications or tools rely on the initial contents of register R2. If they do, you'll need to adapt those programs to handle either TDATE or modified SW time formats. Several other structures also use TDATE timestamps, and rather than create dozens of different timestamp parameters to control the format for each of these individually, we bundled some of them together into one package. Setting the parameter that controls the initial R2 timestamp format also controls the timestamp format in the PCT, the MCT, the 050 label records in SDF files, the SMOQ records, and the packets returned from ERDMGC$. Enabling the new timestamp format for initial R2 also enables the new timestamp format for all of these other functional areas. Before you set the Media Manager parameter to true, be sure that the tape library management system provided by your Unisys partner company recognizes the timestamps in modified SW time format. If you have multiple systems sharing a Media Manager database, you should also ensure that the Media Manager EXEC configuration parameter is set to the same value on all of those systems. The timebook describes all these EXEC configuration parameters in detail. It also contains discussions about adapting your products to support both the TDATE and modified SW time-based timestamps in these areas, as well as a description of how the configuration parameters for TDATE remediation are implemented in a phased manner across multiple releases. There's even a section on time utilities that outlines methods for handling escapees. Release 18 contains updated utility processors and run streams in the EXEC library files. Many of these changes are associated with timestamp upgrades. The Release 18 EXEC lib$ file contains two new utilities, PF1 file update and PF time util. You can use these utilities to aid your testing and migration to an environment using the new program file timestamp formats. These utilities are described in detail in the timebook and in a separate technical update presentation. The Release 18 EXEC run$ file contains updates to several important run streams. The install IOE run stream was updated to recognize changes made to the layout of the package tapes resulting from the new infrastructure product dependencies and the updated installation order now needed for some of these products. The boot-elt run stream, which is used by sysrun, was updated to eliminate some procedural steps related to the step control ILs or SKILs that are no longer needed during every reboot. We'll revisit the SKILs topic a little later. The EXEC rlib$ file did not change between Release 17 and Release 18, but as we noted earlier, the Release 17 version of rlib$ was the first level containing support for TIMEBYINDEX. If you are currently running Release 16, you must use a newer version of rlib$ as part of Step 1 in the two-step process that you use to create your MBE. Be sure that you use the updated Release 18 contents for all three of these EXEC library files when you do your EXEC generation,
and that you set jump key 4 to update your system library file contents with these changes when you boot exec level 49 R4. This topic is of interest primarily if you maintain your own local code within these products. In Release 18, both CP-COM and CP-COM OS are symbolic updates, which means that the baseline numbers for most of the elements will have changed. If you plan to continue adding local code to Release 18 versions of these products, be aware that the line numbers in your local code will likely need some adjustment. We already mentioned this, but it bears repeating. The MCB product was redesigned and completely rewritten in Release 17. This was not just a symbolic update. MCB was rewritten in a different language, and most of the element names in the MCB source code were changed. If you're moving from Release 16, this will be the first time you encounter the new MCB and the special migration considerations associated with this new design. If you've been maintaining local code within MCB, you'll have to determine whether that code is still relevant for the redesigned MCB, and if so, which element or elements in the new MCB product contain the functional area where your local changes apply. This topic is also of interest primarily if you maintain your own local code within the set of products, DDP-FJT, DDP-PPC, OSITP, and TAS. In Release 18, a variety of elements within each of these products was either removed entirely or was removed from source code and placed in the utility file on the product's master tape. The list of elements affected within each of these products varies and is detailed in each of the PMO sections noted on this slide. If you currently maintain local code in these products and have been using source line corrections to make changes to the specific elements mentioned in the PMO, you will have to examine your code and adjust as necessary. After you complete all of the necessary product builds for Release 18 on your Release 16 or 17 MBE system, you might wonder whether you should leave the MBE products from Release 18 installed or drop back to product levels that were delivered with Release 16 or 17. The primary factors influencing this decision are: will you need to use the MBE again, and do you have other environments that will use products built on the MBE system? Products built in an MBE environment can have execution dependencies on Release 18 level syslib common banks, including ER TIMEBYINDEX. These might not be available on all systems in a multi-system environment. Neither choice is right or wrong for every situation. There are benefits and drawbacks associated with both options. Factors to consider include the number of Dorado servers you have in your environment, whether you share executable programs among multiple systems, if you use the systems for test or production, and how long you intend to continue running Release 16 or Release 17 before moving to Release 18. PMO Section 3.2 presents reasons why retaining the additional MBE products could be useful, as well as compatibility considerations that you should be aware of if you leave the MBE products installed. Know that if you remove the MBE products from your system but later find that you need to perform additional generations for any Release 18 products, you'll have to re-establish the MBE before beginning those additional builds. syslib has significant changes in this release. These changes and their potential effect on your applications are important factors to consider when deciding whether to retain the MBE or drop back. See the syslib technical update presentation and the PMO sections listed here for more details on these changes. Establishing an MBE is a two-step process. The first step ensures EXEC supports ER TIMEBYINDEX, and the second step installs the Release 18 level of the 4 critical products. If you do choose to discontinue your MBE, we strongly recommend backing out only the new levels of MAP, PCFP, SLib, and syslib, but continuing to run with the ER TIMEBYINDEX support still in the EXEC on your older machine. Release 17 EXEC always supports ER TIMEBYINDEX, but if you're running Release 16 and booted the EXEC PLE and corresponding changes to sys$RLib$ in order to add support for ER TIMEBYINDEX, you should leave those additional EXEC and RLib$ changes installed. Once you've completed your builds, you'll be ready to begin installing the Release 18 product suite. A couple of things in this area are also different this time. In previous releases, there was an absolute in sys$lib$ called skiles. This absolute contained independently linked exec subsystem, or ILS, associated with the exec step control component. In Release 18, the code previously found in the skiles absolute is incorporated into exec. When you are ready to reboot the new 49 or 4 exec level, the last thing you should do on your older exec level is to deinstall the skiles. The commands to do this are listed in the PMO, Step 11 of Section 7.7, with the documentation of the suggested migration sequence for Release 18. DB-Agent was formerly released as a component of the UREP product. You would install UREP normally and could then install an additional DB-Agent mode. In Release 18, DB-Agent is no longer part of UREP. It's now packaged as its own standalone product. In order to install DB-Agent as a separate product, you must first deinstall Mode DB-Agent of product UREP if you previously installed UREP DB-Agent component. There's one other installation change that applies to UREP. In the past, you had to install both the UREP and UREP key products to enable the full UREP functionality. Beginning with Release 18, there is no longer a UREP key product. You only need to install the UREP product. Release 17 was the final release containing Security Admin product. That product no longer exists in Release 18. Security Admin consisted of two distinct components. One was a PC-based client that allowed system administrator to make various security changes using a Windows-based interface. The other was a processor called SecManager. Users would provide security keyword syntax that was often located in a batch runstream or addstream element to the SecManager processor. In Release 18, the SecManager processor still exists, but has now been moved to the Apex product. You must deinstall the old Security Admin product before you install the Release 18 level of Apex. The transition of the SecManager processor from Security Admin to Apex is completely seamless from an execution compatibility perspective and requires no changes to the syntax located in any of your existing runstreams that called SecManager processor. Another change associated with Release 18 level of Apex is that you must install the Release 18 level of ELMS before you install the new Apex. We've adjusted the installation order for these products in Section 7 of the PMO with the suggested migration sequence. The URU OS 2200 product consists of two components. One component is installed on the ClearPath OS 2200 system, the other is installed on a Windows-based server. In this release, the installation framework for the Windows component has been significantly changed. You must first deinstall any existing version of the URU OS 2200 from your Windows server before you begin your installation of the Release 18 level of the Windows component for URU. A set of products used for editing, CTS, ADD, and IPF, were all adapted to recognize the timestamp format changes in the program file table of contents that you can now enable via an exec time configuration parameter. It's been a long time since we've released new levels of these products, so we'd like to refresh your memory on a few installation tips associated with new levels of these products. Every version of the add product stores a unique version number in the header area of the recovery files, add $TC, for each user. When you install a different level of add, the active editor level detects when the version number saved in the recovery file does not match what it expects. You might see an error message similar to the one shown on this slide. If this occurs, you must either erase or delete your add $TC file via @ERS or @delete ECL statement. When the add $TC file is either empty or does not exist at all, the add processor will either reformat or entirely recreate a new add $TC file using the version number belonging to the correct level.
This version mismatch error should only happen one time for each user ID that has an editor recovery file cataloged. It will not occur again after the user reinitializes the $TC file for the current ed level. After you install the IPF product, a post-installation process is required if you want to use the DDP copy interface within IPF. This post-release process involves using the COMAS configure command to customize IPF. The configure process allows you to change the default size of your IPF workspace files and enables the internationalization interface, also known as I-18N. The configure process also creates the linkage between IPF and the DDP products, so IPF knows that the DDP product suite is present on your system. If a DDP copy command fails after installing IPF, it's likely that your system administrator missed performing the COMAS configure. See the IPF administration guide for more information on this process. Finally, if you use the user authentication product Flex, there's an important change to the -ASYS subsystem owner user ID starting in release 18. The ASYS background run now has an ER key-in interface that allows you to enter such key-ins as ASYS status or ASYS shutdown from the console. Previously, the only way to perform these ASYS monitoring functions was to sign onto the system and execute the @ASYS UT processor. On systems using security option 1 or higher, the attribute requirements for the -ASYS user ID have changed in release 18. This user ID now requires the SS console privilege. This security privilege allows the ASYS background run to register the key-in that provides this new console interface. The security change is not necessary for fundamental security systems. In previous releases, the system file called $genf$ contained information related to run scheduling, files queued to print queues, and tail sheet messages for runs. Many of the timestamps in the $genf$ file were TDATE format and required modernization. In release 18, we've split the $genf$ file into two files. The revised $genf$ file now contains information for print queues, and a new file called $schq$ contains information related to run scheduling. Tail sheet messages are no longer present in either of these files. They've moved to a run event file that's now created by every run at initiation time. This redesign will help avoid contention and bottleneck situations where too many unrelated functional areas were competing for a limited amount of space within the old $genf$ file. As part of this redesign, we've also replaced TDATE$ timestamps with newer time formats. Watch the $genf$ technical update presentation for more details on these changes. You cannot recover or convert between a release 16 or 17 $genf$ file and release 18 $genf$ and $schq$ files. When you first boot exec level 49 or 4, you must set jump key 9 to reinitialize the $genf$ file and create the $schq$ file. Before you do this jump key 9 reboot, you might want to see if there are any important files still queued on print queues and use the SV console key-in to save a copy of those files to tape. The jump key 9 reboot will reinitialize all of the print queues. You can still restore saved files from tape if you need them. When exec level 49 or 4 detects that jump key 9 is set, it gives you the option to recatalog just $genf$, just $schq$, both files, or neither. When you first move to release 18, you must answer both when you see this question. If for some reason you have to drop back from release 18 to a prior exec level, you must also set jump key 9 and recatalog $genf$ to reinitialize $genf$ back to the old format. The upgrade to release 18 might feel a little overwhelming if you try tackling the whole migration all at once. Throughout the PMO, we suggest dividing this migration process into a series of gradual steps that are more easily managed. We've covered most of these steps already. As a quick review or summary, the steps are to first establish the minimum build environment on your release 16 or 17 system so you can build most of the release 18 products you'll need, including the release 18 exec level 49 or 4.
Install the Release 18 software suite. The product installation sequence in Section 7 of the PMO has been tested and ensures that all of the Release 18 products are installed in the right order. After you complete installations, run on Release 18 long enough to feel satisfied that your system is stable and that you are not likely to drop back to your prior release. Perform builds for exception products DDP-FJT, DDP-PPC, OLTP, TM2200, and TAS if needed. You cannot build these products on older releases, even within MBE. You must first install the full suite of Release 18 products, including DPS, the linking system, and all the other compiler products before you can perform any builds that need for this remaining group of products. Install the exception products once those builds are complete, and complete your upgrade to the Release 18 version of MCB Level 10 R2. If you were previously running Release 17, you may have already set the MFD accounting and free space timestamp configurations parameters to true. If you haven't already done so, you should begin investigating this activity after your Release 18 system has achieved your desired level of stability. You can also begin your investigation into efforts required to set the program files, initial R2, and media manager timestamp configuration parameters to true. Release 18 is the first release in which you can change the value of the second group of timestamp parameters. You can find more information about these timestamp parameters in Section 7 of the PMO and also in the timebook. The migration strategy we've suggested encourages you to carefully move up to this release in various phases and only continue on the next steps after your system has stabilized. If for some reason you decide that you have to drop back from Release 18 to your prior Release 16 or 17 software, there are a number of compatibility considerations to take into account when falling back to those older levels. The easiest fallback scenario happens when you have not yet enabled any of the new timestamp formats. Once you've set any of the exec time configuration parameters enabled in Release 18 to true, the fallback considerations become more complicated. We'll discuss some of those considerations in the next slide. The remaining considerations on this slide apply to everyone. EXEC 49R4 contains a new feature that allows disk device expansion via an expand pack key-in. Older exec levels will not recognize packs that have been expanded by this key-in and will indicate that the device requires prepping. Do not use the new expand pack capability introduced in Release 18 until you're certain that you will not be dropping back to an older release. Section 4.1 of the PMO contains more information about this. The new GenF$ format used by EXEC 49R4 is not compatible with older exec levels. If you're dropping back from Release 18 exec to an older exec, you must set jump key 9 to enable GenF$ reinitialization and restore the old format. The Release 18 super processor in TIPUTIL converts the super files to a new format the first time you execute super. If you drop back to an older release, you must continue using the newer version of super. Older levels of super will not recognize the newer format of the super files. Some of you build the virtual tape handler or VTH feature into your exec. In Release 18, updates to the VTH tape pool file from the Viper processor use a new timestamp format to mark the date and time when the pool was last updated. If you use Release 18 Viper, you must continue using the Release 18 level of Viper when you drop back to an older release in order to display that timestamp correctly. Earlier we mentioned the exact PLE you have to add to Release 16 systems prior to establishing an MBE and building any of the Release 18 products. You need that PLE to complete your move to Release 18. There's another set of PLEs that you need to build into your Release 16 or Release 17 exec if you're dropping back to those older levels after running exec level 49R4. See Section 7.7 of the PMO for a complete list of those PLEs. In the MBE scenario, the addition of a PLE was required only for Release 16, but in the fallback scenario, all systems running either Release 16 or Release 17 will require PLEs. In the more complicated fallback scenario, you've moved up to release 18 and did enable some of the new timestamp formats. We strongly discourage falling back to prior releases after you've enabled the new timestamp format. This is the reason why we've emphasized stabilizing release 18 before enabling new features. Some of the time changes do not affect persistent data. The initial R2 timestamp is usually transient. Others stay around a lot longer. Once you've updated timestamp values for the MFD or program file table of contents, those changes remain in effect even if you change the parameter settings or drop back to an older software. All of the products in Release 17 support the updated MFD, accounting, and free space timestamp changes. Many products in Release 16 do not yet contain that support. Similarly, all of the products in Release 18 support the new program file table of contents format, but many products delivered in Release 16 and 17 do not. If you run into problems after enabling new timestamp formats on Release 18, reverting your system software to an older release that doesn't yet understand the new timestamp formats will only increase the opportunity for encountering more complications. If you run into problems after you enable new timestamp formats, the solution is not to fall back to older software. The recommended solution is to turn off creation of any further timestamps in the new format, then revert any of the new timestamps back to the older format wherever possible. Release 18 contains 4 time utility programs to help you manage timestamps in the MFD and program file table of contents. The technical update presentations on time utilities provides an overview of these utility programs and their use. In addition, the Timebook has detailed information on these utilities, use cases, and even how you can upgrade your system to an environment where all of the timestamps are new. The most important point here is that if you activate these timestamp formats on your system, but later discover that this is causing unexpected issues, do not drop back to an older ClearPath OS 2200 release. Instead, turn off those TDATE parameters and then use the tools to revert timestamps in your MFD or program files to their original format. To conclude this presentation, I hope we've emphasized one recurring theme enough times. Many things are different this release. There are new considerations and dependencies you must take into account when building, booting, installing, and executing the software products for Release 18. There are new considerations you must take into account when compiling, linking, and executing your own programs for Release 18, as well as potential compatibility concerns when transporting programs between a system running Release 18 and another system running either Release 16 or 17. We've documented all the known issues in the PMO and Timebook, and we strongly urge you to spend some time reading through all this new information. A haphazard approach to migrating to new releases might have worked for some of you in the past, but with all the new dependencies in Release 18, you're far more likely to be successful if you follow the suggested migration strategy as closely as you can.
Unisys offers a comprehensive set of ClearPath Forward services to enrich the value of your ClearPath Forward applications, data, and systems. Please contact your Unisys representative for more information.